Hello everyone. As you can see from my face, I still haven't recovered from Easter weekend of partying at a wedding and then of course Easter Day. So I'm just kind of relaxing, taking it easy. I was coming down with something. I don't know if I still am, but I look really tired and I just feel kind of lethargic. But I'm also not used to going to weddings, dancing it up, partying all night. So that could be what it is too. And if you'll hear in my voice, I'm a little scratchy today. So it's yet to be seen whether this is a cold forming or just from partying it up on Saturday. I often see different perspectives of thrifting. Here we are in 2026, and people say that, like, for example, Goodwill is really expensive, and I've probably said that too. And people say that resellers are the reason Goodwill is expensive, but I actually have a different story about that, and it may shed some light on the Goodwill pricing structure, and it may shed some light on whether or not resellers are at fault. So let's talk about what I have observed stemming back to the early 2000s. Our original Goodwill store here was this small little store, no bigger than a bookstore. You could probably fit 5 customers in it. It was extremely small, and this was in the early 2000s. I remember distinctly because my children were little. And the thing about that is we have strip mall plazas in town. We have quite a few of them actually. But in the 80s, they were booming. They were completely full of stores and shoppers. You couldn't park a car in the parking lots because everybody was shopping at stores then. But then I was in the city for a while working a professional career. I kind of lost track of what the shopping plazas looked like here. And instead, I was in the city shopping all the time. And I can tell you firsthand, shopping then was still strong. There were no closing stores. All of the shopping malls were full. And a lot of people would do their shopping on Saturdays. So I worked Monday through Friday in a professional career. And then Saturday and Sunday were my shopping days. And I can tell you that it was booming. And this was going into roughly around the 2000 mark. And when I came back here and started a family and all that, the Goodwill store here was super small, like I was saying. And it wasn't enjoyable to shop in. Like, I rarely went in there. I didn't think the prices were that cheap, though. I can't even remember an example because I wasn't spending time much in there. Then one day, they moved. They moved to a new location. And it was still in the same town, just in a different strip mall. The strip mall they were in had about 3 restaurants and I think a dry cleaner. And then in the middle of the parking lot, there was like this is funny, a photo lab. If you don't know what a photo lab is, it was where they used to develop film from cameras, camera film. And I don't even know when that closed, but it was after 2000s that went away. And then a restaurant went in there as a takeout place only. And then after that, a bank. And they tore that original building down and now it's a bank. The photo lab, when they closed up, it became a mail order company only. And I don't even think they're in existence now anyway. But that was what was here in that particular plaza with Goodwill at the time. Once they moved to the bigger location, it was set up like a department store. It was huge. It was way bigger than the small little storefront they had prior. And it was in another strip mall plaza, but in this plaza, it was a way bigger plaza. And they had actually 2 strip malls in this plaza. And every storefront was taken. There was nothing vacant. There was a grocery store, a couple of Dollar Trees, Dollar General type stores, the Goodwill, and I forget what was on the other side. At one time, it was a Blockbuster, but it hasn't been a Blockbuster in many years. But I can't remember what was there. But then the gym moved there. And The gym was also in a very small space in a different location, part of town. They were located right next to a grocery store. And now the gym business around here is booming. And that's exactly what happened to Goodwill. While they had the smaller space, you really never saw, or at least I didn't. I never saw resellers. I didn't know what a reseller was. Now, my uncle, he was an antique dealer. He had 2 antique stores in town. His wife ran one, and then he ran the other. In past videos, I've talked about all the stuff I've gotten from him over the years. He's just passed down things from me that he either didn't sell or wanted to get rid of in bulk. I bought stuff from him. He's also given me stuff, such as jewelry and stuff like that. He closed his storefronts when the rents were increased. I don't recall the exact year. And when Goodwill moved from that small area to the larger space, their rent like tripled. When they were paying like $5,000 a month, now they're paying like $15,000 a month. And now they're in this bigger space. The old location had dollar sales. I think it was every Sunday you could go in. There was a rack of shirts. You could pick them up all for $1 each. Something like that. But in addition, today Goodwill has like a color coding system. So this tag is on sale, half price. I don't know if they do dollar days anymore. I'm not in Goodwill enough to know. But the old location, they definitely had dollar days. And they also had a similar color coding experience, except they didn't have actual paper tags on a little plastic thing that you would adhere to the clothing. They didn't do that. They used actual sticker price tags with a price tag gun. You'd have a price tag sticker on all the products, and then whatever color it was, that was the discounted color of the week. I don't recall, though, how deep the discounts were. Like, currently they're, I think, half off, but back then, I think it was more than that. And I think, if I remember correctly, and I may be incorrect about this, but from memory, I believe if the item didn't sell when it was half off, it went to $1. I think. Now, they did not have an 18-wheeler that went to that store. I know that for a fact because that first strip plaza where they were in, there's no room for that. So there was no, loading dock or anything like that out back. It was strictly people bringing their unwanted stuff in a box and then put out on a few shelves. It wasn't big at all. There wasn't masses and masses of stuff. When they moved to this new location, there is a huge 3-truck bay loading dock. So they can move product out to an 18-wheeler. They can move product in from an 18-wheeler. And it's very convenient now. The store location is huge. They also now have the automatic doors, where before it was just a door you had to pull open and push to open from the inside. And now it's automatic doors. And they really got up to speed with the, department store feel. And that's when I noticed they started having the half price days. I think they're held on holidays. I remember going to a few. I saw them in the paper and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I didn't enjoy them. I'm not really one that likes, to go shopping in a crowded space. So even though it was a bigger location, on those half price days, there would be way more people there. And I went to 1 or 2 and that was enough for me. One time though, my son was very small. He was sitting up in the front seat of the cart. I want to guess he was maybe a year. I don't really recall the exact age. I just know that it was in the beginning of 2000. I know that for a fact. And he was definitely with me. And as I strolled through the aisles, I came across a bag of used Legos. They were all loose in a bag. There were no instructions. There was no box. There was no picture of what the Lego assembly would look like if it was put together. None of that. I had no clue what any of it was. It was just used Legos. In addition, they were dirty. You could see the food stuck on them from the prior child and all that. And The sticker, I remember, said 59.9 and kept going, but the sticker cut off. That was what it was on this plastic bag that was stapled at the top. They didn't have those paper tags that hang off like clothing. And that's another thing I wanted to mention. All the clothing was the same price. There were no individual tags on clothing. They were all the same price, therefore they didn't price the clothing. So there'd be a sign at the beginning of a rack. All jeans, this price. All t-shirts, this price. All pajamas, this price. And then the kids' clothes were all 99 cents. Anything was 99 cents. And again, this was early 2000s. And I'm saying that because later on, like in the middle 2000s, that's when it started becoming more posh. And now they have racks of what they called designer clothes. And they'd have a tag on there on the top part, like a sign. And it would say designer clothes priced as marked. And that's when they started doing the paper tags with the plastic hanger thing that they'd poke through the clothing. And the jeans and the t-shirts and the kids' clothes, they were still okay. There were still dollar bins and things like that. And the jeans were still one price, the t-shirts were still one price, and so forth. But this particular bag of Legos looked to be $5.99. But I wasn't sure. The reason I wasn't sure is because, like I said, it was on one of those little sticky tags. And it was 59 and there was another 9 and it kept going, but it was, the tag ran out, right? And the second 9, it was 59 and then 9, but the second 9 was smaller. So it led me to believe that it was $59.99 or $59.90. And I said, that can't be right. I don't think I had ever seen anything for $59.99 at Goodwill in the early 2000s. And a worker came out. There was a door on the side, which is no longer there because they remodeled since. But at the time there was a door, and this kid came out with the back. And he was a young guy, probably in high school. And I said, excuse me, I was just looking at this bag of Legos here, and I think this is mismarked. And he picked it up and he looked at it. And he said, what's wrong with it? And I said, well, it says $59.9. Does that mean $5.99? And when I say bag of Legos, I'm not talking about a garbage bag size of Legos. I'm talking about a Ziploc that was like a quarter full of Legos. There might have been, this much in the bottom of the bag. So I'm not talking about like a garbage size bag of Legos. And of course, like I said, no instructions, no box, no picture, no nothing, just the loose Legos, and they were dirty. And the kid said, no, that's $59.99. And I said, okay, are you sure? I'm not trying to be difficult, but that seems ridiculous. And he said, no, I am sure. And that is the price, $59.99. After he said that, I was so taken back. And believe me when I say this, I don't try to make waves when I go to a store. I don't try to make trouble for people, especially people who work there. It's not me. But I don't know what jumped into me that day. But when he said it was $59.99, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. For these dirty Legos with no instructions or anything, can I please see your manager? He's like, well, you can, but she's the one that priced them. And I said, even better, because we're going to have a chat. So in front of everybody in the store, and at this time, there were quite a few people because, like I said, it had moved from this little tiny location to this giant store. So there are more people shopping there than ever at this point in time. And they were all within earshot. And I didn't sugarcoat it. The manager came out and met me face to face. And I said, hi. And she says, I think you have a question. I said, yes, I do. Why is this little rinky-dink bag of dirty Legos $59.99? Please tell me that's a mistake and it was supposed to be $5.99. And she said, no, it's $59.99. So I literally, being the troublemaker that I shouldn't be, but I was, I took that bag of Legos and I held it up in the air. And I showed it to everybody. I got some attention. And I said, hey, the manager is trying to charge $59.99 for this rinky-dink, dirty bag of Legos. And the people responded with, they couldn't believe it. What? $59.99? That's crazy. And she said, we're running a business and that's what it costs. And then she turned around and she left the room because now everybody's upset because of me. No, I have no regrets. I felt justified. That put everybody on notice. Now people are starting to realize bigger isn't better. Oh, haha, there it is. They moved to this fancy location, this much bigger location, and now we're paying for it because somebody's got to pay that rent bill. Somebody's got to pay for those 18-wheelers. And at that time, it was starting to sink in that there were 18-wheelers. And then we started questioning as customers, what are the 18-wheelers for? Are you shipping merchandise out of here and bringing some in? Because we were all under the impression that it was all donations that Goodwill received from the local residents, the local community. And then right around that time, I learned about the bins. The bins weren't here locally. I had to take a road trip to go to them. I went once. I was not impressed. At that time, they just weren't impressive. And I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like it. Nobody was fighting over anything. There weren't crowds of people. I was like one of 5 people there. But again, that was early 2000s. So I just wanted to put my perspective out there because, I went to Goodwill recently and I happened to get some really cool vintage dishes for $1.99 each. But 6 months ago, back around spring, summer, I went and the prices were astonishing. I couldn't believe what they were charging at the Goodwill. And there weren't any more racks with signs saying all jeans, $4.99 or whatever they were. It's now, they're marked individually. Everything is. Every piece of clothing is. And another thing they no longer have are the dollar children's bins. Because back in the day, all children's clothing were $1. I think actually they were 99 cents. And there was a big sign, 99-cent bin. And I know that because I had 2 little kids and I was buying stuff for 99 cents. People talk about it today and say resellers are at fault. I don't know if resellers are at fault because I'm not a reseller. I have no idea. I do know that the prices increased when Goodwill started getting bigger. They needed more space. They had to find a way to pay for it. That's all I know. So I'm just putting that out there. And the other part of that is, did I see resellers in Goodwill? Not for a while. When my kids got a little older, I would go to Goodwill to find toys and stuff because toys can be really expensive. So, there were occasions where I was in there and I would hear different people talking about reselling. Goodwill does have to pay their bills. They have rent. They have truckers. They have, these 18-wheelers that come and go, drop stuff off, take stuff with them. They travel to their bins and bring stuff to the Goodwill bin outlet stores. That's gas. All the employees. So that alone would be a reason for Goodwill to raise their prices. So what you see now is instead of going into Goodwill to buy a $4.99 pair of jeans, they're now $24.95 and up. Winter coats 6 months ago, couldn't even buy one, and it was spring. The winter coats were $60, $70. And I'm talking for non-name brand that were used. So I just thought I'd put that out there and, share my experience with what I saw, what I heard, and just add some perspective to the conversation that's constantly ongoing about this topic. Thanks for watching today. Take care.